build my gallows and build them high. Makes a long time climbing before I die. I want the chance to spit in his eye. Well, they gave me balls, but I can see between to a dusty yard and a long gone green. They call that freedom, if you know what I mean. And I dry my sorrows, but the whiskey's gone. I'm sober as just...
Hello, everybody. Welcome to Longbangers. I'm Matty. This is episode 95. I'm joined tonight by John, as usual. John, how are you doing?
Brilliant. Champing at the bit to get into this. Been looking forward to this episode since full time on Saturday and even more since yesterday.
Happy days. And we've also got a new guest tonight, which is Craig. Craig is 9125 on Twitter. You might have seen his tactical analysis videos on there. They're excellent. Craig, how are you doing?
Delighted to be on, and yeah, just like John saying there, absolutely buzzing after the weekend. So I keen to get into it.
Aye, superb. Right, so the best in the way. It was Scottish Cup quarter final. John, did the game go the way you thought it was going to go?
I thought Hibs were going to win, if that's what you mean. But the rest of the game, I think from a football fan's perspective, it was a really good cup game. From a Hibs fan's perspective, first, I think Raymond on Saturday on Quickbang had said for about 70-80 minutes Hibs were the better side, and then Motherwell got back into it, and that kind of turned the tables a wee bit. But I don't think it turned the tables in Motherwell's favour. I think we were probably still the better of the two teams. I don't think that we came under any undue pressure as a result of having conceded the two goals. Like, I don't think we flapped. I don't think we buckled, which is a lot of criticism that Hibs have come in for in the past.
Something we'll talk about that a bit later on as we go, because the bottle question came up again, and we'll maybe explore that a wee bit. Craig, when you were watching the game, did you think that Hibs were in any danger?
No, I actually thought, like, the first half, in terms of how we played, like, it was a very strong performance, and we looked great. We were just lacking a goal, we were just lacking that, but I felt like we were always in control of the game. And as the goals came, the person I was watching it with said, "Oh, that's it, 2-0, comfortable." And I think you always have that little Hibs thing of going, no, until it's maybe the 93rd minute and we're 2-0 up, I'll maybe start to relax. And I always had a wee, and literally just as I finished that sentence, Motherwell pulled one back from the corner. And I think just the nature of scoring that goal so quick after we scored our second, I think that's potentially what maybe led to it kind of crumbling towards the end. But I still felt, even when it went into extra time, I still sort of felt confident. And bizarrely, even in the penalties, I felt quite confident we were going to go. I didn't say that out loud, but yeah, there was, and I don't know if that's just the way, like, the performances and the way we've been playing this season, is that we do have maybe a bit more confidence about ourselves and how we're playing.
I thought it was one of those games where, like, we talked about it a few times in the podcast, John, about Hibs hit a level of performance. So we did it against Queen of the South, did it obviously against Stranraer, first half against Livingston, where we just looked that wee level above. And I thought we started the game against Motherwell the same, just right on the front foot, dominating the game, creating no great chances. I think that's probably the one criticism I'd have, is we didn't really test their goalkeeper enough. But second half, once we got to 2 goals, I was like, that's us. But that second goal, the first Motherwell goal, it just, between that and Tony Watt coming on, I don't know what it is about Tony Watt, because he's shy against everybody, but when he plays us, he turns into like fucking old Ronaldo. Just like we didn't seem to be able to handle him.
I don't know, like, apart from, I know it sounds a bit bizarre, but I don't know if he did much apart from his goal. I mean, obviously his introduction and him scoring made a difference to the game, but there were a number of personnel changes that Motherwell had made as well.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it's easy to look at Tony Watt and say, like, you kind of like what we were saying before about these sort of like false narratives about, how Hibs are perceived and what we do. It's easy to look at Tony Watt and say, you're the reason, like, you always play well against us, but there have been changes to accommodate him as well.
That's a fair point, but if you'd seen my WhatsApp messages when he came on, And then for the period of time that he was on as a messaging folks saying, fuck's sake, we never he'll cope with this boy.
I think I said that after the previous Motherwell game, Easter Road. You know, when he had a few theatrics, he was going down quite a bit, holding his face, that kind of thing. He doesn't need that because he has the ability, he's got the talent. And I don't know how, like, no disrespect to Motherwell or whatever, but if you remember when he burst onto the scene, I think he scored the winner against Barcelona for Celtic, and he seemed to be destined for great things.
Nobody ever mentions that about him.
Aye, and his career's kind of gone downhill a wee bit. Or sorry, maybe not downhill. It's just not hit the heights that I think that people perhaps expected for him.
I love the way you clarified that going from scoring the winner against Barcelona to playing at Motherwell maybe isn't going downhill.
No. Well, this was the thing. Like, one of the things I was going to say about Motherwell is that, like I said, it was a really, really good cup game, and I hope that I would be as magnanimous in defeat as I am in victory, because it was a really, really good cup game. I don't want to come across as being patronised or anything like that, because I don't look at Motherwell or anyone else in the Premiership like that at all.
Aye, you do.
Well, I was going to say Hearts, but they're in the Championship. And they didn't count.
Fair point. Whole League of Bro ran. Craig, where did you think the game was won and lost?
Well, it was interesting because I think, like John alluded to there, like when Motherwell beat us at Easter Road before, they played a 4-3-3, and Cole, Tony Watt, and I think it was Jordan Roberts, I think at the time, but we played like a narrow three, and they caused us like absolute havoc. And that was at the time when obviously the stuff about Porteous and Nisbet had gone on, and they were kind of not exiled, but they were spending time on the bench, and McGregor was in for Porteous and Boyle was up front with Doidge. So it was and the team looked a little bit different. I think that day Cadden played, I think Gogic was injured as well, which obviously makes a massive difference. And I think when I seen Motherwell's lineup and seen, I think Tony Watt was coming back from an injury, and I think they played it looked like a sort of 3-5-2, which I was a wee bit unsure about that as a lineup. But Hibs obviously consistently recently have been playing this 3-5-2, and it works really well for them at the moment. I think it's the best. They found a really good way of getting Nisbet, getting Doidge, getting Boyle into the team, because I said on one of my videos before that was going to be a real test to Jack Ross to try and get them all going and get Boyle, attacking well down the right and maybe even getting into the box. And I think from the game, and certainly when you look at Hibs' both goals, you actually see the numbers we're getting into the box these days is phenomenal. And I think that's got to be huge credit to Jack Ross and the coaching team, because a wee subtle change I've noticed recently was Jackson Irvin's out of possession. Hibs are almost like a 4-4-2. Irvin was kind of on the left-hand side. And then when we get the ball, we seem to just rotate a little bit and go back into that 3-5-2. And Irvin just sort of has a bit of a free roll and kind of roams. And then he's now been able to get into the box, which is obviously where he's most dangerous. But I do think on the flip side of that, where we lost our goals definitely came from a bit of fatigue. And I think I think we were a little bit of not changing the system and not adapting after it did cause us problems in the end.
It's a good point, the fatigue bit, because if you'll be looking at Twitter while the game was on, not that anybody was, because it was that riveting to watch the game, but there was loads of folk crying out when Motherwell got the goal back. Loads of folk crying out for a sub. There's one of the things that came up on Quick Bang on Saturday night as well, John, was why did Jack Ross not make a change earlier? Well, what do you think was his thinking behind that?
Well, I wonder if it goes back to what Craig was saying there about the previous game with the midfield three. So the previous game Easter Road when Motherwell beat us 3-0, the midfield for Motherwell were dominant, and we just didn't seem to have an answer to it. And I wonder if, fatigued as the players were, we had the better of midfield. And I wonder if I saw a suggestion, just one suggestion, one of the substitutes was put McGregor on. And that, to me, almost suggested that you are kind of surrendering the midfield, if you like, and inviting more pressure onto the defence. And that's a really hard decision, I think, for Jack Ross to make. What do you do in that situation? Do you try and stay on top of the midfield and trust your players that they've got the legs to see the game out? Or do you give up a player? Because, I mean, it's easy to say, bring McGregor on, for example, but who do you take off in that scenario? Because that's going to have an impact somewhere else in the pitch.
Yeah.
I mean, like I say, I don't have the answers to these things. I just try and look at it from a slightly different perspective. And I think to take a midfielder off, because I think Jack Ross has done that in the past, and he's put a defender on, and it's invited pressure, and we've maybe conceded from it.
It's a tricky one, isn't it, Craig? Like from a coaching point of view, where do you stand on that? Do you think there are times when it's right to take off an attack-minded player to bring on a defender, or do you think it does sort of invite the pressure on?
Yeah, it's a really tricky one. I think substitutions are always hard because often the times that you go to make them, normally you're too late. You're making them after something's happened, and the fans quite sit and go, "Oh, if you made that 5 minutes ago, we might conceded." And it is really tricky. And I do remember just when Jack Ross joined, one of the kind of criticisms from Sunderland was that he never changed. He never changed system, and he never really changed players. But when you look, I was just kind of scrolling through there to have a look at the bench. We weren't really blessed with a huge amount. I think if Cadden had been there, I think I could have maybe seen him coming on for Boyle and maybe just giving us an extra wee bit height and a wee bit of, and maybe that would have helped for the second goal. But I wonder if it's just a bit of a lack of faith between the starting 11 and what's coming off the bench. I think Dre Wright coming on, he's struggling for confidence. You've seen that with his first couple of touches. It's not great. And Halberg coming on, would that have made a huge difference for New? I don't know. I think it's a tricky one. I do agree with John. I think just chucking on defenders, I'm not sure would have been the right thing, because if you bear in mind, if you look at our lineup, we've got 4 on the pitch already. You chuck a 5th on there, you are just sitting back and inviting that on, and I think fans then would probably complain that we're going a bit safe. I think the big thing was Motherwell scoring so quickly. I think if they hadn't scored from that set piece, I actually think we maybe would have got a bit more hold on the game. They would have maybe lost a bit of confidence, and maybe we could have started phasing the subs in and maybe seen the game out. But I just think that goal, was a bit of a sucker punch. And as I think John said as well, Motherwell made like a couple of attacking changes. Like Tony Watt came on, I think Lawless came on. They basically chucked 4 people up front, and that's kind of where I think they got their goals from.
Yeah, and I suppose Jack Ross's argument would also be that against Livingston, we went to 2-1, but actually managed the game brilliantly. If you think after Livingston scored, which was a late goal anyway, I don't think they really troubled us at all after that. We took the ball into the corner. We actually had a couple of chances to score a third in that game. So if you're looking at the experience for that game into this one, you could probably see why he didn't make the change. I just think personally, I thought the players looked knackered, and we could have done with some fresh legs on.
I think Jamie Murphy, he seems to be, I don't know where he's gone now. You had what's his chops? Chris Cadden is injured, so he wasn't on the bench. So I wonder if 3 games, 6 days, injuries. There wasn't a hell of a lot there to pick from the bench. Yeah. It was kind of like, just like I said before, it's kind of catch-22. Do you go with the guys that are there, knowing that they're tired, and try and maintain that midfield, or do you make a sub and kind of give it up and try and ride it out? Because I think that probably would have been even more nerving. And as the game had gone into extra time, you could almost argue that Jack Ross's use of substitutes benefited Hibs throughout extra time as well.
Aye, do you know what? It's a really good shout, because I suppose if you roll the dice and try to defend and it doesn't work, you've sort of set yourself up to be defensive for extra time
for
as well.
Another 30 minutes with an already tired team.
Whereas we didn't do that. Actually, the extra time period, I think we were still quite positive, quite offensive in the game. We attacked and created some decent chances.
It's the second goal. I was watching the goals just again before we came on, and I think in the build up to the second goal, I think it could be Boyle, but someday we lose the ball, and then I think it could be Boyle, maybe fouls Tony Watt on the halfway line, and they take a quick free kick. And if you watch it go out to O'Donnell, Jackson Irvine just cannot get there. He's running. You can see he just can't get there. And then because they've got 4 up top, Doig can't get out. I think Lawless is in between Porteous and Hanlon. McGinn's marking Devante Cole. And then Tony Watt just runs. And if you just watch him and Boyle, Tony Watt just runs. And Boyle's running as well, but he just can't keep up with him, I think. And it's no surprise that Boyle and Irvine are the two that are most fatigued from that. And obviously when the ball, it's like a pretty good delivery, and obviously it's a great hit. Now, looking at the bench here, it's like Gray, Stevenson, McGregor, McGuinness, Wright, Halberg, and Bradley. Would any of those changes, could you have changed anything there to potentially, you could have maybe put David Gray on and pushed McGuinness, but I agree. I think if you do that, you've rolled the dice, and with sort of 10 minutes to go in a cup tie, it's maybe a bit of a stretch.
Aye, that's a good shout. So we'll talk about the Hibs goals in a wee minute. There was a question about Macy's role in the 2 goals that we conceded. So if you have a look on Hibs.net, there was a bit of kind of some folks saying that the keeper couldn't do anything about it. Some folks saying he should have either made an attempt to save the first one or come for the cross for the second one. Talked to a goalie coach, he absolved Macy of any blame of it. I don't know what your what do you guys think? Did Macy at fault for them?
You want to go first, Craig?
To be fair, it's no surprise the goalie coaches, by the way. To be fair, there were those goals you kind of watch on TV where you sort of think, oh, like something's happened. There's been like a deflection, or he's just not. Especially the first one. The first one kind of looked like a wee bit bizarre, but I just think the way the ball was struck and the flight of it, and the fact that everybody just sort of turned, he kind of ran quite far over to his right hand side. For both goals, you are a little bit disappointed that he's not made an attempt, but I'm not really sure he could have done much more about them. I mean, since he's come in, he's done pretty well. To be fair, I've been quite impressed by him. And I think the whole thing about coming out for the cross, if you look at what headers you're looking at a very experienced, talented, confident keeper coming out and taking one of them, and you've got to accept, the level he's playing at the moment, he's maybe not quite there yet, and the lack of game time he's had probably over the last wee while in his career. So, yeah, definitely a couple of bizarre goals, but I think he's probably in the clear.
John, you happy with that?
Aye, I was just thinking there when Craig was describing it, that perhaps the most frustrating or annoying thing about the 2 goals is that the keeper doesn't appear to make any effort to get the ball. And I think given his stature, if you like, it almost looks kind of giraffe legs, like a wee bit unsure of himself. The first one, I think we've probably all seen goals like that before, where, like Craig says, like just the flight of the ball, it just seemed to catch everyone by surprise. It was an awkward area. I think Lammy sort of side foots it. It's not really a shot, it's not a cross, it's not really an anything, and it just finds itself in the back of the net. One of my mates had suggested that there was a wee bit of criticism for not having a man on the post, and if I don't think that we had a man on the post. The closest person to it was Nisbet, and he sort of watched the ball come back in as if to say, "What the fuck is that doing going there?"
I think they've been on their way out by then. I'm not sure if
the
post at the corner, but normally what happens is so I'm going to sound like a wanker because we never use phrases like this, but the first phase of play with a corner, that's when the men come off the post. Like if there's not an immediate chance, they come off so to try and play offside. They clear the line. So I can see why there wouldn't be anybody on the post at that point, because they would
it's not like Nisbet was kind of standing in no man's land. I'm not suggesting that he was at fault for the goal. He was marking a Motherwell player, and like you said, he wasn't on the post to begin with, but they had started to push out a wee bit. Second goal, like Craig described, you always look at these things and say, right, who is it that didn't get the crossing? But by that stage of the game, what was it, about the 80th minute, say? Jackson Irvine knackered Dougie Tripod. I think what was it? You said there was maybe 4 up front. Ball comes in. Martin Boyle, by that point, has done a hell of a lot of running throughout the game, and Tony Watt's got the jump on him. And the one thing, if I was to get really pernickety about Macy, is that he seemed to come for it. He stopped. He seemed to come for it. He stopped, and he never really. If Craig was the other Craig that who's underwater now, if he was in the podcast, he'd talk about like Macy setting his feet because he's pointed the finger at Marciano for that before. I think because he's sort of hesitancy on whether to come or whether to stay on his line, he's off his feet and he doesn't get the opportunity to make the dive. And I think that's what makes it look worse than it probably is that he just, because he doesn't make a dive, because he's a little bit hesitant on his feet.
It's one of those ones where I think when you watch the cross, it's difficult for a keeper to come and pack that out. And Like how
It's
many
that
times?
stereotype. It's that dangerous area between, you know, whether the keeper stays in his line or comes out or not.
Aye, and it's not like it comes along at like a consistent height. The ball starts off high and drops onto Tony Watt's head. So to get it before it gets to Tony Watt, I mean, fair enough, we've got a tall goalkeeper, but they need to say how tall Matt Mace is because it's reported every time somebody says his name. But he's still going to have to have some leap in him to get it before it reaches Tony Watt. So, and we've seen like over the years, like Malkowski would come for a ball like that and then make a total arse it, and then we would lose a goal, and the keeper would look ridiculous when they try it. So, I'm quite comfortable it wasn't the goalkeeper's fault. The other player I wanted to single out was Gogic. Gogic was absolutely immense in the game. John, what did you make of his performance?
Huge. Gogic, just phenomenal. When we signed him, there was a lot of unhappiness amongst the Hibs support about a hard man in midfield. We need that Matty Jack type. And I said, that's all fine and well, because if you just go for the hard man and that's all you're getting, you're limiting yourself. That's all you get. That's all you just get, a guy that spoils play, that goes crunching into tackles. But we're looking for more because of the style of play that Hibs are seen to want to play. What Gogic had, I mean, don't get me wrong, like Gogic had a wee spell, I think, where he went a little bit off the boil, probably at the same time as the rest of the team.
Yeah.
But I think, aside from the fact that he goes crunching into tackles, and there was a quality bit where I think he's gone in really, really hard on Crawford, and he's just glared, like he's got up afterwards, just glared at him, and I thought that is absolutely outstanding. I thought the desire and the fight that Gogic showed in particular, but it was evident throughout the team on Saturday. I thought it was phenomenal. But I think something that he's added to his game, and I think it's possibly, like I was a wee bit critical a few weeks ago about the midfield three of Gogic, Newell and Irvine, because it was kind of like they were sizing each other up and trying to work out how to play and how to complement one another. Mm-hmm. And I think it's a compliment to all three of them that there seems to be a little bit of a balance there. And I think perhaps one of the unspoken, the unheralded things is how much Gogic's ability has risen to match the likes of Newell and Irvine around him. Like, he's taking in balls, he's spraying away passes, he's supporting attack, he's supporting defence. He's just everywhere. He's becoming he's become a really good signing for Hibs. Like, he started off well and he's just gotten better as the season's gone on. And if he can maintain that level of performance, we've got an absolute bargain.
Craig, what do you think he brings to the team?
I think, when he doesn't play, I think you notice massively. He obviously he sort of screens the back three pretty well, and Hibs predominantly all like attack down the right hand side quite a lot, and he's not often involved in like the build up of goals, but certainly if we lose possession of the ball, he usually wins it back, and players like that are, they're absolute gold dust. But I think maybe it was the game against Ross County, and I think we maybe ended. I think it was maybe when we drew, or maybe when we lost. But I actually noticed that he can play a bit. Like, John's absolutely spot on. Like, he is more than capable of getting the ball and switching play, and he pretty much every time he wins the ball, he plays a forward pass. He's not like safety, and he doesn't turn and go back. He tries to do that, and I do think he is quite an unsung hero. I mean, the fans love him, but I think for probably the tackling and the physical side, but actually what he brings when he wins it back, I mean, I'm going to go on out bold here and say like a bit like a Kanté, but that's what he does. He wins it and he plays forward. He wins and he plays forward. And I think having somebody like that in Hibs, most of their goals come from counter attacks, and having somebody like him that can win a ball, play forward, and let your Boyles and guys running behind is absolutely gold dust for us.
Superb. I thought he was good, and you mentioned it earlier, Craig, about getting the balance of having Boyle and Nisbet and Doidge. We spoke about it, John, but I almost think so you give Jack Ross credit for the way that we're playing at the moment, but I wonder how much a part in that Cadden's injury has played, because that was like the kind of the dilemma that we talked about, was how do you get Cadden and Boyle on the pitch at the same time and still be effective. But actually, with Cadden being injured, it's taken that question out of the equation, and we seem to have found the right good mix. So, John, how does Cadden get back in the team?
I don't know. I was just going to ask there, like, do you think that someone at Easter Road's giving him the Tonya Harding treatment? No, you're right in what you say though. Like it was that. How do you get, how do you fit square pegs around holes, or whatever kind of whatever saying you want to apply to it. Cadden is demonstrated as a good player.
Mm-hmm.
Boyle has demonstrated far and away how valuable he is to Hibs this season. It's probably, as harsh as it sounds, it's probably to our benefit that Cadden's found himself injured. I don't know how you get him in the team, but that being said, if we can get him back fit and it makes our bench stronger, perhaps we don't have to face, another extra time or an extra 20 minutes, where we can actually make those positive changes, whether it's a like for like or just make a tweak that still gives us an attacking outlet, but doesn't concede too much at the back.
And Craig, same question to you, but for Jamie Murphy.
Yeah, it's funny on the cat. I was actually flicking back through my notes because I think at the end of one of my last videos, I started to write out as many different formations and teams as I could, trying to fit Boyle, Doidge, and Nisbet, and almost all of them don't include Cadden because I kind of thought he just has to go out, and I do. But I agree with John. I think if we can get him fitting on the bench, I think it does give us a wee bit options. If things aren't working out up front, you can shift Boyle up front and you can put him wide. So yeah, he still is an important part. And I think we need to now start looking at actually if you are going to compete in cup competitions and be near the top of the league and Europe and stuff when it comes around, you need a squad. You can't rely on the 11 anymore. So, and obviously looking at the summer ahead and maybe potentially a little bit of rebuilding done, I think he will come true. Jamie Murphy's a tough one because when I started doing these videos and watching the games like a bit more closely, like he was just like a pleasure to watch, just his movement. I think he really helped Josh Doig initially, just coming off the left-hand side and going over and overloading that side. But you can see out of possession in that role kind of at the top in the midfield that he sort of struggled to get back and he struggles kind of out of possession a little bit. And I think when you see Gogic, Newell and Irvin in there, Irvin can run and he can put himself about and he's got that, and I'm not sure Murphy has. But again, just kind of piggybacking John's point there, if you've got Jamie Murphy coming off the bench 2-1 down to Motherwell, for example, that's a nice calming influence to come in and potentially get the team, not to be too defensive, but
yeah,
fresh legs can maybe relax the team down and maybe see us over the line. So I don't see those guys coming back in and knocking anybody out the starting 11, but I do think we've seen on Saturday there that we do need them for the squad and for seeing out the season.
If we talk about the two goals that Hibs scored, so the first one comes with McGinn swinging in a great cross onto Doidge's head. Craig, from a tactical point of view, talk us through the goal.
Yeah, so like I seen, funny, we were talking just about the punditry just before we came on, like listening to it on the radio for a little bit and then listening to the game, everyone seemed quite confused at what Hibs are doing. And I do think that for me anyway, looking at how high Doig is usually in the box, I still think we're 3-5-2 when we've got the ball. And I know it does, and I think we are kind of a bit 4-4-2 when we don't. But if you look at the goal, it goes out towards McGinn. And then you've got forward runs from Boyle, from Irvin, Newell and Gogic are kind of sitting a bit deeper. But because Irvin's pushing on, it allowed Nisbet to drop off, and he just dropped a little bit deeper. I think he bounced the ball with Paul McGinn. And then with the space he left, you just see Doidge just pull away. And I think I retweeted it out actually that one of the guys online who does a lot of analysis for Dundee United, he shared something about Paul McGinn contributing to quite a lot of attacks in Hibs in the final third. I think he was only behind Barisic, O'Donnell and Tavernier in terms of like those passes that then lead to chances. And obviously it's just a phenomenal delivery. One of those strikers' dreams, and then obviously for Doidge, it's a fantastic header. So there was a lot of good things from it, and I think again, like if you just freeze where our goals are going in at the moment, we're getting numbers in the box. Like Doidge was in there, Irvin was in there, Doig was at the back post, Nisbet was at the edge of the box, Boyle was coming in. So yeah, I think that's been a real sort of attribute of our play recently, and it's getting us chances and it's getting us goals.
And the same could be said for the second goal as well, because if you, again, we've got numbers into the box there. So what was the kind of the build up in the second goal?
Yeah, so the second one, it's something I've said a few times on the videos that, like for me, Paul Hanlon's like more than capable of stepping out of the back. And actually, I think it was against Ross County where he was up in the final. I think he maybe got the assist or he pulled the ball back from one of the goals. And he's definitely got that in his locker. Like every so often, he'll just pass the ball wide and just make a barnstorm and run forward. So it was good to see him stepping forward with the ball. And I think he played to Doig. And then I think it's Joe Newell actually that makes a run in behind, which he doesn't tend to do too often, but it's a really good run. And then again, yeah, we've got Boyle, Irvin, Doig and Nisbet in there. And obviously it gets pulled back, obviously goes to Boyle, it goes to the edge of the box, and then obviously Nisbet strikes it, and Irvin, I mean, I'm going to say he was just onside, and then just taps it in. But yeah, if again, it's just another like a kind of hallmark of our play at the moment that we're able to get numbers in and we're getting good deliveries into the box, which I know for as long as I've been watching Hibs, that's not been something that we're used to.
We seem to be chucking a lot more into the box as well, John. It was one of the features of the play. I spoke to Josh while we were watching it, and said I can't remember Hibs over the beginning of Jack Ross's time with us to now putting as many balls into the box as we've been doing. So there was crosses getting fizzed, across the face of the goal. Same against Livingston.
Yeah.
They were just dying for somebody to get a wee touch on them. Do you think this is a deliberate change that we're doing, or do you think it's just a result of the change in shape?
It's a good question.
Thanks.
I wonder if it's just a sort of a natural byproduct of how the team's changed and has become more settled since the turn of the year. So you mentioned obviously the injury to Cadden, and I think since, was it when Porteous and Nisbet came back into the team, I don't think we've had much in the way of big changes since then.
Mm-hmm. There's
maybe been like a tweak here or there, like Macy for Marciano, for example, but I think it's been largely static. And I wonder if, like, I mentioned it just a wee bit before about the midfield three, and I'll probably talk about it for a long time to come, but they've found something that works for the three of them now. And I wonder if that's allowing the rest of the team, like now that that's settled, the rest of the team is now starting to have a bit more confidence in what they're doing, allowing them to display their attacking instincts a little bit more. I thought both goals, I thought the first one in particular was brilliant, because in one of the rare moments where Mikey Stewart was now trying to put across his own opinion, he actually praised Ryan Porteous for a couple of the passes that he was playing. And one of them, so I think it was the one that started off the movie, rather than play the ball square, he misses out a player and he drives it out to Paul McGinn. As Craig mentioned, Kevin Nisbet comes short, takes the ball, lays it off, by which point McGinn swings in the ball and Doig just meets it, and it was a cracking header. But it had all the hallmarks of some of the stuff that we talked, all the hallmarks of things that we've observed and commented upon recently. So, like the movement between the front three, Boyle, Doig and Nisbet, one of them's coming short, one of them's going wide. You know, who's the defender picking up? It must just create an absolute nightmare for them, and we saw the benefit of it. And like you say, the number of bodies that we're getting in the box, I want to say it's even longer than Jack Ross. Like, it's been a real frustration. In fact, it's even a wee bit frustrating now, because sometimes we have that many bodies in the box, even though we get a really good ball in, there's no one there to stick a toe out. Because I think there was maybe 2 or 3 occasions like that during the Motherwell game where balls have come across and you thought, like, just gamble. But I wonder if at some point in the very near future, players are going to start gambling on it because they know that ball is going to come in. Because it's happened with more regularity.
St Mirren have just equalised, by the way. They're saw it on the TV. Aye, they've got 7 minutes left. It's 2-2.
I think as well, just on the attacking thing, I think when we play 3-5-2, which obviously we sort of, I won't say stumbled upon it, but it was something that was kind of, we started playing it. I think it was maybe like Dundee United game, maybe the tail end of the last year or early on, and we sort of persevered with it quite a bit. And I think you're now starting to see, I think, with adding Irvin and guys like that into the team, that if you're Hibs now, or you're some of those players going forward, you know that if you lose the ball, you've got Gogic, which you could argue is essentially having an extra, like 2 men there. Joe Newell, actually, I think Calvin Charlton, who puts a little bit out for the Hibs stuff as well, actually put a little bit out about Joe Neal's defensive stuff, and actually said how underrated he is and that. So you've got two guys that are happy to sit there, and then obviously you've got Porteous, Hanlon and McGinn, and even if one of them steps on like Hanlon or McGinn, one of them will stay. So you've got like a four, like a square there that I think's pretty solid. And even if a team counters against us, I think we've got a good chance of winning it back. So I agree. I think it's maybe because we've been quite settled and we've not chopped and changed, and it's regular players. I think we're just seeing the benefit of that, which we haven't really had. I think because of change of managers and signings and turnover of players, we've not had for a long time.
It's a good shout about Newell as well, by the way. He does loads of defensive work that you don't really kind of pick up on. Everybody sort of classes him as the playmaker and the one to take the ball out of the midfield, but actually he does loads like last ditch tackles and stuff like that where you wouldn't really expect him to pop up in areas winning the ball back. I think he's a really valuable player, although between him and Boyle giving the ball away for the Motherwell second game, that I don't think I've ever. No, I was going to say I don't think I've ever been as angry at Hibs as I was at that moment.
I'm sure that's not true.
Complete fucking lie. But do you know? I don't even know what you say about that, Craig. Is it from a coach's point of view when you see your team's 2-1 up, you're in the dying moments of the game, and you're in a really, really good position in the opposition's half. We were almost on the edge of their box. And there's nobody pressing Boyle to put him under pressure. And I don't know whether it was the pass that was bad or whether Newell was just kind of not expecting it, but it was the cheapest way to give away the ball. And then when you see what happened, almost as soon as it happened, there was an inevitability that we were going to concede. What do you say to players when that happens?
I actually seen something just before we started recording that Hibs they're actually really, really low down in the table for winning the ball back in the final third. I think we were like third bottom of the table. And I suppose maybe by the way we're playing and forward runs and being quite expansive and having players wide, potentially it is leaving us maybe a wee bit short in the middle. And if an instant like that happens, then we're struggling. I mean, it's a really tricky one because for that play and that type of risk taking and things like that is what gets you the goals and gets you the opportunities. I do think maybe they were a wee bit rattled after the goal, potentially, and to be fair, after it happens and they break, they do the right thing. They foul on the halfway line, which is, as a coach, I'd be like, absolutely bring them down. I just think at that point, Motherwell get the ball quick. I mean, I would have liked to see, and I've always thought this about Hibs, that we lack maybe like that game management where like Boyle does that, he fouls 20 Watt and just like kick the ball away and take a card, or just pick the ball up and walk back and argue a little bit, and then and let Irvin get back, let everybody get back, just knock the tempo out the game and then throw it and then play. And I think actually, ironically, when we were countering towards the end, Motherwell kind of did exactly that, and Halberg got caught up in all that stuff and the card. And
good shout.
I think that it's just that kind of side of it where we're maybe still a wee bit naive, but we're certainly getting closer to that.
We've talked about the dark arts before.
Aye. Well, it's funny because there are examples where it's important. So you think back to the 2016 at Tynecastle for Jason Cummins' goal. So Hearts, we were like the better team in that game, and what Hearts were really good at doing was breaking up the play. We were trying to play it quick, and Hearts was just niggly foul. But if you look at that goal for Cummins, I think it's Kevin Thompson, I think gets fouled, but in the one movement, he puts his hand on the ball, gets up and plays it straight away. So it was almost like the game wasn't slowed down at all, and Hearts never got the chance to regroup. And obviously Henderson swings the ball in and Cummins scores. But it's that same kind of thing where if the Hearts player had fouled Thompson and then stood in front of the ball so he couldn't play the quick pass, we didn't score that goal. And it's the same thing. So it's a really good point. Right, game goes to penalties. How were your nerves, John, for the penalties?
I couldn't say they were fine, could I? Like, I'd be lying if I said they were fine, but I think
50p, 5p. Was it?
Aye, £50, £5. I felt nervy but confident, if that's such a thing. Like, I think if we were nervy, if we were sitting there in the metaphorical stands, imagine how the players must be feeling. Imagine how much pressure and nerves that they're under, and it's to their credit that they performed the way that they did in the penalties. And I think that's something that they're not getting enough credit for.
The penalties were by and large very good as well. I mean, do you have a preference for how a player takes a penalty, Craig?
No, I think it goes down. I mean, you can see before, like at the end of the game, the goalkeepers were all looking at the phones, and obviously they had all the data about the penalties. And I mean, I thought the penalties were excellent in terms of how they took them. Very confident strikes by and large, and I think that's maybe like John's saying. That's maybe where we have to be a bit more brass and shake off this whole thing about being the glorious failures and all that kind of stuff. And maybe this side are actually starting to push away for that by going in and winning games like that. And and we know from recent history that those type of things catapult us on to normally good things. Like we maybe need that little bit of disruption to then maybe push us on. And I don't know if it was Porteous after the game said that, but they were asking what they were saying, and he said, like, this isn't over, like this is your time to go and do it and step up. And I mean, the nerves were definitely there, but I think as soon as some of the penalties started going in, I felt a little bit more confident as it went on.
I think Mark Boyle set the tone with his penalty, just smashed it at the back of the net.
I can't remember who took the first Motherwell penalty, but that was a peach as well, just right in the top corner. Was it Cole?
Devante Cole, aye.
So I was like, fucking hell, I'd love to have a penalty like that. I just would have the ball. If I tried that, it's good in the stand, guaranteed.
It was actually Nisbet was the one when he stepped up. I sort of was like, I'm just not feeling that one. I don't know, just the way he was coming. I know he's had the greatest time with penalties.
I think obviously in the one that folk talked about, I think first of all was the one they hit off the bar. I think he had a penalty after that, didn't he?
Yeah.
Was it a league game?
Yeah, he missed that one or had it saved.
Aye, I can't remember the direction that he went when he hit it. But I wonder if Liam Kelly, because with the exception of Boyle, Hallberg and McGinn have both gone to the keeper's bottom right, and so is Nisbet. I wonder if Kelly just went, fuck it, I'm just going to go bottom right because that's where they seem to be going. I still wouldn't have any concerns about him hitting another penalty.
Yeah.
I think
Kelly was coming off his line quite a lot as well. I kind of noticed that. I sort of sometimes wonder when UEFA and things change rules, if Scotland go, we'll start to adopt them when we feel like it. But a few times he was quite far off. He was there, and Macy was keeping 1 foot behind the line. But Kelly, I think when he actually made his save, he was quite far off. I mean, it wasn't a great penalty. He would have saved it probably anyway. Yeah. But
he definitely took the wee bounce off the line before he dived. Porteous then gives the keeper the eyes and sends him the wrong way for the winner.
So that's what I was saying as well about the previous 3 penalties that Kelly had faced then had gone to the right, and he dives right again, and Porteous sends him the wrong way. It was actually a really, really assured penalty from probably not what you'd expect for a centre half. Like centre halves don't have the reputation of having the finesse to be able to stroke it into the corner the way that he did.
Porto's no normal centre half the way. Buzz's skill. So right, puts us in the semi-final, and not I want to dwell on it. Rangers then. So there was all sorts of ramifications for the season for Hibs. If we win the cup, or if Rangers win the cup and we finish third, then we're guaranteed European football till Christmas minimum, because we'll be in the group stages of the conference. He was kind of caught in that double-edged sword where Rangers were playing St Johnstone, and that's sort of like our safety net. If we didn't win the cup and Rangers win it, it's still a cracking season for us. St Johnstone, incredibly, I don't know if did you watch the game? You see what happened with it?
I never watched the game. I watched the final 6 minutes, if you like.
I mean, what are the odds the keeper got up, and he didn't actually score the goal, but more or less scored it, and then coming through on penalties. So I'll get your opinion on it, guys. Rangers going out, good or bad for Hibs?
Do you know, it's actually, it's more St Johnstone that worry me, to be honest. Like, see, since I started doing the videos, they have like consistently, like when I've been looking at some of the data and stuff, like they have just been flying up the table. And actually, for a lot of the stuff, they're almost like pushing Hibs for like in terms of performances being the third best, like in terms of what they're doing more recently. So I think, yes, it is. It does probably make it, Rangers on their day could turn up, but Hibs have actually done okay against Rangers in some of the games. Like we have done all right. So it's just more if we can shift the narrative to St Johnstone being the favourites, maybe, then I'd be a bit more confident. I think it's just when that favourites tag falls on us that our bottle tends to go. But as we just said, maybe this is the time to, shake that off and actually embrace that and push on and go for it.
What do you think, John?
I think I'd said last week or the week before that I'd rather be in control of our own destiny. So if that means now, I wouldn't want to rely on Rangers winning it, because that would kind of suggest that Hibs get beat. If we were to face Rangers in the final, you're kind of thinking, well, if we get beat, it's a no-brainer. Like, we're still in Europe. So we're definitely in charge of our own destiny now. But like Craig says, I don't think we are the favourites. I don't think we're labelling ourselves as such. I think it's quite the opposite. Like Craig says,
I think we'll definitely get put down. I mean, we're sitting third in the league, so
I think it's wrong.
St Johnstone are top six, and then the other two teams in it are going to be bottom six.
So
our form's good.
Why
would we not be considered favourites? By the way, I agree. I would rather St Johnstone were labelled favourites, but I could totally understand why we are.
I think the top six and the bottom six thing is a wee bit misleading. There was something the other day about the number of points that Motherwell had gained since Graham Alexander had been in charge, and I think it was second only to Rangers, but they find themselves in the bottom six.
Yep.
So actually, our performance against them is probably pretty good, relatively speaking.
Yeah.
The whole glorious failure thing, Derek McInnes, you asked me about this at the weekend, because Derek McInnes had made the bold claim that outside of the old firm, he had taken Aberdeen to more on more appearances at Hampden than any other team, and it's stacked up.
Yeah.
Since 2013, when he'd taken over, Aberdeen have been at Hampden 12 times, and Hibs have been at Hampden 9 times. But somehow we get labelled with the glorious failure, or the Hibs did, but there's no equivalent for Aberdeen. Why is no one talking about the shit the bed antics at Aberdeen?
Sheeped it,
whatever you want to call it. I was desperately, I couldn't sleep last night, and I woke up at 3 a.m. and I rattled off a message to Matty saying, "That's it, fucking case closed, glorious failures."
So you did. I forgot about that. I saw it before in the morning. Then I forgot about the message. What we did 3 a.m. thinking of Hibs.
I was just bored, and it came to me. It was like fucking Einstein, E equals MC, not Hibs that.
Aye, why are Aberdeen not getting but Aberdeen did get called bottlers. I think with Aberdeen,
I think Aberdeen's bottler tag usually comes up in their games against Celtic and Rangers.
Aye, we've talked about this before, but that's not really bottling. It's Celtic and Rangers are better teams than Aberdeen, so they're expected to win those ones.
So I was having a look, just as part of that, I was having a look at some of our results. So when we lost the League Cup final at Ross County put out Celtic the game before. When we got put out by St Johnstone recently in the League Cup?
Yeah.
They went on to win the League Cup. So I don't think there's any shame or failure or embarrassment in that I see some Hibs fans talking about. Like, these teams have performed well, and as Craig says, St Johnstone have been doing well in cup competitions. Like, they're just a good cup team. Like, it's a thing in football. It's an intangible thing. But St Johnstone, it seems of late, have been a really good cup team.
It's a massive chance for Hibs, though. Like, if you look at it,
it is huge. Like, don't get me wrong. So I think a lot of people would have been looking at the remaining teams and would have assumed that Rangers would go through. And with 3 minutes to go in injury time, in extra time, you would think that they would wrap that up and they would be in the draw that's about to take place. Again, no one's talking about them being big game bottlers. Like, they haven't won a trophy since when? With the exception of the league title that they've just won.
2009, I think, was their last one. Unless you count they won a Petrofac, so you can't take that away from them, John.
So no one's talking about them being, big game bottlers. But it is definitely a chance. And you did a poll on the Longbangers Facebook group earlier about who you would want, and I think if you were being pragmatic about the whole thing on on the strengths and weaknesses of the teams, you'd probably want St Mirren in the next round, in the semi-final, because that would seem to be the easier of the possible ties.
They're all capable of winning. This is the thing about it, because they actually mentioned Rangers there. Both of the times that they've gone out of the cups this season, so St Mirren beat them in the League Cup, and the same thing happened, but Rangers scored right close to the end. I think they were trailing, weren't they? And then they scored right at the end, and thought that was that. And then St Mirren went right up the park and scored again, Joe, and put themselves back in front. And then Rangers scored right at the death last night, and then conceded after it when it seemed impossible to concede. Is that bottling it, or is it just like again cup things where teams throw caution at the wind, and there's a goalkeeper up and causing havoc?
Goalkeepers on the penalty spot. Well, not even on the penalty spot. He was pretty much in the 6-yard line.
Aye. How raging was Alan McGregor?
He didn't look pleased.
He was. It was peak McGregor that whole game, because there was a couple of times the defender or the attackers bumped into him and gave him a wee knock, but he was trying to kick the ball and all that kind of thing. It was as angry as I've seen him for fucking ages, and that's saying something. Right. Do you get the argument of, like, could you? Because the danger is that we finish third, and assuming that's going to happen, although it's not quite settled yet, and then don't win the cup. Does the season then lose its shine? Do you think folk will look at it as a season that's maybe not a failure, but one of missed opportunities?
They shouldn't. I don't think they should. I think like just on trophies and winning cups are hard, and I think that's maybe you go back and look at, like, I know Celtic have the budget and all that. I get that, but you probably do appreciate what they did and how they managed to do it. Like, it's a phenomenal achievement, and for us, like, going into those, like, it is a perfect chance for us. It's a great opportunity. The team's left. I think Hibs are more than capable of beating all three, and have done throughout the season. I'm just trying to work out who I would prefer to get in the sort of semi-final. Who would I rather get? A St Johnstone and, like, sort of deal with that pressure up front and then go into a final against a Dundee United or a St Mirren, or if you would take that semi-final and against one of the smaller teams. It's a really difficult one to call.
It is. I can't make up my mind. So I know for definite that my when you step away, because the opportunity for Hibs, and this is when I put my pragmatic head on, which is stupid for a football fan, because you shouldn't be pragmatic as a football fan, because that's not what football is about. And looking at it and saying, well, if we didn't win it, you would have wanted Rangers to win it, because then if we get third, the money that comes in for that European run sets us up as a club for probably the next couple of seasons if we can capitalise on it. And so it's harder to get that money now guaranteed. But the flip side is, you want to win a cup. Like, the money is one thing, but winning a cup's totally different. And the emotional side of being a football fan, you want, like, third place is great, but you didn't get anything for it. A European run is all right, because actually generally what happens with Scottish clubs is, unless you're Rangers or Celtic, because you get to a qualifier, get papped out by the first decent team that you come across, and then that's that's the end of it. But you win a cup and you can be buzzing for that for years. So the opportunity to win the cup, even taking away the benefits of what it does for us in Europe, seeing Rangers get knocked out was a fucking brilliant thing. But by last night, I think the time Rangers went in front, I realised how much I didn't want them to win and how much I wanted them to get knocked out, because I was like, fuck it, I want Hibs to win the cup, and that's the best way for us to do it, is to not have to play Rangers. So I just hope it pans out that way now.
It's you just got to deal with the next game, haven't you? Regardless of who it is, whether we get the so-called easiest tie or we get the more difficult one in St Johnstone. I think everyone's going to want to avoid St Johnstone, but presumably if we didn't play them in the semi, there's a chance that we'll play them in the final. I think this is the thing that maybe bugs me the most, is when people talk about the prospect of not winning and it being embarrassing. Like, all we have is a chance. Like, we've done everything that we needed to do to get ourselves into the semi-final, and that's where we are. Like, we can't think any further ahead than that, because we don't even know who we're playing. The whistle's not even been kicked yet. We just need to deal with it.
The whistle's not been kicked yet.
Sorry, the whistle's not been blown on the game yet. The first ball's not been kicked. Fuck off. You know what I mean? You just need to. It's just it's an opportunity. It's no more at this stage. It's an opportunity. It's no more. And then if we should get through the semi-final, it's an opportunity and no more.
Aye.
And just don't let the nerves, don't let the pressure overcome you as a supporter, because the players have got that tenfold.
Well, it's an interesting thing, Craig. You were talking about St Johnstone being labelled favourites, and one of the points I made on Hibs.net was all Hibs players are going to hear for the next wee while is you've lost 3 semi-finals. Are you going to go one further? But that's like a negative thing to get thrown at you. But all the questions will be, that's just the nature of the beast. But the press conferences are going to be, you've lost 3, will you make amends this time? Blah, blah, blah. But St Johnstone are on for a double. And that brings its own pressures as well, because I think the St Johnstone players are only going to get, can you win the double? Can you win the double? And although it's a different thing, it's reinforcing because that's quite a positive thing. How much do you think that will play on them?
That's a good point, because I think that game, for like that's almost a cup final win. That's like got all the drama and all that. The last minute goal from the goalie and the assist from the goalkeeper, and then the penalty shootout, against Rangers. But yeah, you're right. I mean, they will that in the press conferences. I'm sure they'll say like, "Oh, this is what a historic season this will be. You're on for a double." That, and that will probably start to play on the players. And not to be patronising or anything. It's not like that. It's players that are used to winning and used to claiming trophies. Don't get me wrong. Winning the League Cup certainly helps, and certainly they know they can do it, and they've been there and they've done it, and they've beat teams that were marked better than them. So I do think that'll play a part. The other thing I think as well is that still having no supporters in and no crowds in as well, that does probably take away a little bit off that type of pressure for the players, and not having to get worried up, like caught up in all the emotions that would tend to happen around the games. And I think sometimes for Hibs in the past, like of course some games we've been fairly beaten, but I do think when they've looked out and seen 25,000 Hibs fans around the stadium and a wee pocket of whoever we're up against, that's definitely caused them some issues in the past. So again, maybe going into these semi-finals without that, the pressure a wee bit on St Johnstone, a wee bit of pressure on Hibs, depending on who we get against. I'm hoping that they're able just to sort of move past that and just keep doing what they're doing, because at the moment, they are in pretty good form and we are looking pretty good. So, but yeah, I agree with John as well, though, that fans need to just know, get ahead of it. Just take each game as it comes and just try and be a bit more relaxed.
It's easy done, because we've not spoken about Dundee United. We're just making assumptions that St Johnstone are either going to play us in the semi-final or potentially a final if we're able to get there. But actually, St Johnstone might not get past whoever they play next as well.
Cups aren't always won by the best team or the richest team, as last night's game proved.
Yeah. Do you think, John, there's shades of the 2016 season where we had some Hampden disappointment and then had a point to prove when it really mattered?
It's an easy comparison to make, isn't it?
Aye.
There's been so many. I saw a tweet earlier about finishing third and going on to win the cup, and I think there was a third point that the person made in their comparison. But the other comparison to make is, I've seen some suggestions that we just abandon what we're doing in the league, start playing Dre Wright, start bring Jamie Murphy back for the cold wherever he is, start playing those guys and just focus all our attentions on keeping players fit and ready and ready to go for the cup, because I think we've only got maybe like 2-3 weeks until a potential final.
It's not far away. There's only about 3 league games left, isn't there? So
yeah. So I think way back in 2016, when I think we'd come away for the Ross County game, and I think at that stage Hibs had a wee dip in form, and it looked like, I think automatic promotion was already beyond us, and second place was beyond us as well. And I remember saying to my mates, just abandon the league. We're not getting promoted. Don't worry about it. Just focus on the league. But to Hibs' credit at the time, what they did was they continued to battle on all fronts, and they took it to the wire in the playoffs against Falkirk. And I think that kept them sharp for the cup final as well. So I wouldn't abandon the league. we need to keep playing competitively and at the top of our game in the remaining games to give ourselves the best opportunity of winning the cup.
I agree with that. I think that's where Rangers went wrong last night. I think Rangers have been seasons done. Once they got knocked out of Europe and once they beat Celtic, I think their heads went into cruise control from now on. They didn't have to focus on anything other than the cup, but I didn't think they had full focus on it. So I totally agree with you. I would play our strongest 11 as much as possible. Right, just about out of time since Kilmarnock's just scored the penalty there. So it's 3-2 now. St Johnstone on Saturday. Craig, how do you think St Johnstone and Hibs will approach this game?
Yeah, so I think I don't see Hibs changing a lot, to be honest, and I do wonder in the back of their mind what they'll maybe are looking ahead to the semi-finals and finals and having that in the back of their mind when they go into it. Hibs have been pretty consistent recently with how they're playing, barring any maybe injuries. Obviously, the game going to extra time and penalties and things like that could cause maybe a little bit of change, but I think I expect them just to continue playing the way they are. And I think before, I just need to check what St Johnstone usually were. I think they were usually play like a 4-3-1-2, I think, if I remember. So, but they're an interesting team to watch. I think the last time we played them when Liam Craig scored, Hibs didn't play particularly well that day, but I was quite impressed by St Johnstone and how they managed to sort of counter us. So I think it's actually, it's on paper, it looks like a really interesting game. I think it'll be a really good game to watch.
What about you, John? What do you think?
Just take the game of them. I think it's an opportunity obviously in terms of the league for trying to secure that third position. I don't know who Aberdeen have got at the weekend, but we're kind of looking at them and they're looking at us and seeing who's going to blink first. But it's an opportunity for Hibs to really take the game to St Johnstone and find out how to beat them. Because I don't think we've convincingly beat them this season. I think we had a Stevie Mallon penalty early doors.
Penalty, yeah.
Early doors in terms of the league before you pick me up on that.
I meant early in the season. The mad thing was, you see the cup semi-finals, I think for the first 30-35 minutes, Hibs were outstanding in that game. Like, we absolutely battered St Johnstone, and then they must have scored with just about their first attack, and then the arse just fell out of the team. So maybe
the way that Hibs have started recently in the last few games, it seems to have been a slight change in tack, not trying to find their way into games, but going after the goal. After the goal, and then, as I think a few people have pointed out, Hibs tend to be better on the counter-attack and picking teams off.
So it's quite difficult. So if you're a counter-attacking team and you're playing a team who's also quite counter-attacking, how would you win that one, Craig?
It's a good question. I mean, I think I was just flicking back through just some of the notes when we played them the last time. Like, the games between them, like, see, when you compare all the data and stuff like that, they are almost like pound for pound, very similar sides, both playing a back three, and St Johnstone just like play a wee different type of attack. Like Witherspoon sort of drifts out wide a bit and Booth goes forward, but it's very similar to kind of Hibs' system. So I do think that's why when we came up against them the last time, it was quite close, and it was really, if you remember the goal, I'm pretty sure it was just Doig on the stretch kind of headed one away, and it was just Craig fell to him at the edge of the box. It was a good finish. But in that game, in the first half, I'm pretty sure Boyle missed a couple of chances. I'm sure we squandered quite a fair few chances, if my memory serves me. So I think, again, there's obvious that we are able to get behind them and cause them problems. But I do wonder, both teams having playing going to extra time, I do wonder if that will impact the lineups or how they play, or maybe actually the standard of the game ahead of the weekend.
I wonder if there's a temptation for the managers, John, to kind of do something completely different to what they'll do in the semi-final as well. So, like, it is you're not going to learn anything from this game type thing. But then I think back to when we played Rangers before we won the Cup, and we beat them 3-2 Easter Road, and I don't think that side was too different to the one that played the Cup final. Certainly the system was the same, because we knew the 3-5-2 worked against
I'm trying to remember all of the results that we had against Rangers that season, but I've got this vague recollection of having played them early and playing a 3-5-2 and getting a result against them. Then we went to a 4-4-2 and they beat us. And then, like you say, that game at Easter Road where Gunnarsson scored the winner, it was a 3-5-2, and I was like, that's the team that we need to be playing against them in the final, and we did, and it worked out.
So I don't know what Jack Ross will do. Score prediction?
I'm going to say a draw. I think maybe 1-1.
John?
I'm going to go... What's your result against them? I'm going to go 1-0 Hibs.
1-0 Hibs. 2-0. 2-0 Hibs. And that will secure third, I think, as well. I think if we win on Saturday, I think that will be us home and hose for third.
I was just looking up the fixtures there. Aberdeen have got Livingston at Almond Vale. Or the Tony Mac. So
Livingston looked pretty poor against Dundee United. I don't know if they might get a reaction to that because they were really, really passive, and you can't afford to be passive against Livingston because they'll just bully you.
Aberdeen looked really poor. Sorry, I thought you meant Livingston looked really poor.
Oh, sorry, Aberdeen against Dundee United in the Cup. I mean, they never laid a glove on them at all. I don't know if did you see that game, Craig?
No, I didn't. I read a wee bit into it and have a look, and it said one of the guys I follow does a lot of analysis with Dundee United. He did actually say that he thought that was the best, one of the best halves of football he's seen them play all season. And I think similarly they were due that kind of performance. I think they've maybe not been quite getting the results that their performances have maybe merited. So, but yeah, the Aberdeen seem to, that kind of transition is they're seeming to struggle a little bit, and that's good for us, though. It's good to see that they're kind of faltering towards the end of the season.
Big rebuild job for Stephen Glass. Right, that's out of time for the night. Craig's been an absolute pleasure coming on. A wee bit different for us to have somebody who knows what they're talking about on. Other than the guests that we have on, when it's just me and John, it's too ill-informed.
Just two idiots trying to navigate the minefield of tactics and formations.
Craig, if folk want to see your video, where would they find you?
Yeah, it's just 9125 analysis on Twitter and on YouTube as well.
Definitely would recommend it. We've like I said, we've been following your videos for a wee while, and I find them excellent. For an idiot, I can watch that and feel like I know what's happened. So that's credit to you.
No, I appreciate it, guys. It's I'm going to try and get back on getting the videos done. As I said, I've been just doing some. I tried about maybe doing a wee bit on Twitter and doing some live stuff as the games go on, but I'll try and get back on the videos before the season's out. Good stuff. Well, thanks for coming on, John. Thanks for your time as always, mate. So thanks for listening. We'll be back on Thursday for Short Bangers. So send us in your questions on Twitter or on our Facebook group. And then we'll have Quick Bang on Saturday after the St Johnstone game. If you'd like to come on that and share your views, just DM me on Twitter as well. In the meantime, thanks very much for listening. We'll catch you next time. Well, they trailed me down when I broke free. I drank all the whiskey in Tennessee. I don't drink what I know.